I think my first thoughts when CSGO came out, it was...
CSGO would never become a real game. And
why don't I just taking shots right out of the gate? We've made it 10 years of CSGO since its release, and obviously a lot to talk about over the years, over the decade that it's been with us. Let's get the first thoughts from you guys on CSGO's release, you know, back in the beta days.
I think my first thoughts when CSGO came out, it was... I've been 1.6 for a long time, and I played the earlier version of 1.6. It just felt way better. Obviously, coming from 1.6, where there was never an update in the end. It was how it is, nothing changed. Whatever you did in the game was still the same. You tried to figure out new small moves.
My first thoughts when the game came out, played 1.6. Personally, I played it for fun with my friends, that's it. When the game got introduced and when it came out, I wasn't necessarily too hyped about it, but I did try it out.
I actually think I was reliving what happened when Source came out. So I'm like one of these die-hard 1.6 people. Yeah. And when Source came out, I tried it for like 5 minutes and I was like, I'm never playing this game. This is stupid. I'm leaving. I'm back to 1.6.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
It was 2014, and basically every 1.6 Israeli player was playing still 1.6 and no one moved to CSGO, and I was coming to my brother with I had no credit card, nothing, and I come up to him, yo, let's buy CSGO, let's play this game. It looks so much better than CS, and in my idea I was like, finally a game that I could be better than him at.
I was like at a boarding school in Denmark when everything was like starting to be released and stuff like this. So I saw some videos, I saw that show match they played.
Oh yeah, like the mixture of like all the old school American versus the European stuff.
Exactly, and I heard the comments afterwards and the famous Sonic tweet or whatever it was with that CSGO would never become a real game and stuff like this.
Aged like a fine milk.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the first map was released was Dust, which already to me was a huge warning sign. No one's playing Dust. Why are they releasing it as like the test map? It had
the
fog and particles and cars that were on fire.
I remember feeling like just playing against bots, like just to get a feel for the weapons. Like you couldn't spray in the early days. I don't know if you guys remember like what the spray of like the M4 and the AK felt like, but I was just like, everyone's gonna have to be an AWPer because like the spray just isn't a thing.
A lot of broken things. Yeah, there was some strange Molotovs and you couldn't deny and stuff like that in the beginning.
The Molotov was this super weapon, right? That was just you couldn't.
And you couldn't extinguish.
You couldn't extinguish.
You couldn't extinguish it with. You couldn't do that with smokes, and also it could go over the whole map. So you could throw. It didn't like there wasn't like a time limit of it being in the air. It would just land somewhere.
Yeah. I believe the beginnings of CSGO was actually developed by this other company called Hidden Path. So Valve had kind of outsourced the development of it early on, and I think they must have felt the same way about the early versions, and then they just said, okay, we're going to do it ourselves. Valve have both been criticized a lot for doing really small changes and sometimes taking a long time to the point where everyone is really upset, but it sort of actually feels like if you zoom out a little bit, you sort of see, all right, actually, maybe it does make sense for like the longevity of the game.
In the big perspective, I think overall, like by far majority of the decisions they made have been really good. Also, if you take a look at when they made the sound changes to some of the weapons. Now, if you listen to the old ones,
you're like, oh God, thank God they changed them. Yeah. I made a conscious decision years ago to stop criticizing Valve for those kind of like game updates because like it's clear that they're doing something right. Like as much as pro players and people heavily involved in the competitive side of things are like, man, this change is like weird, or it's not the change that we want, or not the change that it feels like Counter-Strike needs to get into a good place. But the health of the game has just remained for so long.
I actually have a specific example of that. I think this must have been during the Tech9 Mania days. Olaf had a whole tournament where he did more damage with the Tech9 than he did with the AK, and people were really upset, you know. And people were obviously going to the devs and saying, you have to change this, right? I think Valve made some point, if it is that good, then you should try to exploit it kind of to the maximal ability, because that's the way to prove to us that we have to change it. But if
I mean, that's also why it was a shame that they didn't let the revolver stay for longer, right?
Yeah.
Use it to the maximum potential.
I mean, don't bring that up.
They've made mistakes, but I agree what you say, Adam.
I think CSGO has come a far way since it got released, right? It was the issue of CSGO was supposed to connect the CS source and the 1.6 into one game, and it's always tough, right? Because those two games was completely different, the way you played the game or how the mechanics worked in the game. I think they did a great job, and I think we needed that to keep Counter-Strike alive. because the game was getting outdated in that sense, right? So I feel like what they did was the perfect timing.
I mean, I think the game is in a really incredible place. Counter-Strike is only really Counter-Strike if you play it on certain maps. So I would say that's the one place where I can see that maybe it'd be cool if there was more going on, if there were some more map changes over the seasons or whatever.
Right now it's like one of the most perfect FPS game, if you ask me, in terms of feeling like CS or what CS was or is, and it's like good to play, it's smooth to play, weapons are nice to shoot with. Like, there's nothing wrong with these aspects.
It feels like the game itself, if you look at the professional side of things, provides so many opportunities for innovation and for different styles. Like, you have teams that can be hardcore, fundamental, and tactical. I think the current meta is shifting a little bit in a competitive sense towards like a lot of like individual initiative and individual plays that like are team-based in the structure of the entire overall picture of the team, but like you have a lot of individual freedom.
I would say CS-wise, it's actually the best it's ever been. I think there are still some things missing with like some maps, like they're unbalanced, some sites. Like I just love watching the game, playing the game, and I think for the fans it's just amazing, you know.
I've been asked the question at a few events, like what would you change? I'm thinking hard, and I don't really figure out exactly always what I want to say. And I think that's also like a testament that the game is in a really good place. But like from the competitive standpoint, I think the game is in a really healthy spot.
Why are we at a square table when it's
I
the
was
round
just about
table?
to say, yeah.
Jason.
You've just blown my mind.
What have you done?
I don't know.
Cut.
I know,
Yeah.
get the round table in here.